Welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Lens with your hosts, Jake and Scott. In this week's episode, we're talking special pours. It's just Scott and I, and we are having our eyes on Derby 150, one of the biggest events that will ever happen in Louisville, Kentucky. So we're thinking about those special pours that you might have during Derby week this year. So sit back, buckle in, and listen to our newest episode, talking special pours. Scott, what's going on, man? How are you?
Not too bad. Wrapping up the weekend. Right before I hopped on here, had to assist the wife. She has, I guess, gotten bitten by the bug of sourdough bread. So, you see all the people on TikTok and all that stuff, and it's gone crazy. I think she got bit by the bug, so had to take it out of the oven because she put it in a Dutch oven, and that thing is freaking heavy as hell. So, had to assist with that.
The old doom scrolling will get you hooked on things. I'm not gonna lie. I have a new want in my life around something not like that, but I want a neon sign. I don't know why. I just want like a neon Bourbon Lens sign.
Okay, I saw a guy that makes them to look like neon, but they're actually LED.
Okay.
So you know, neon is super fragile and probably toxic if you break. 1,000%. There's a guy that makes them look like old school neon signs, but they're with LED lighting. So I'll have to find the link and look at it. I can't imagine it would be that expensive if it's actually LEDs instead of the glass blown and all that stuff.
No, so I did get a price. I went down the rabbit hole for an 18-inch by 18-inch neon Bourbon Lens sign, which would be really cool because I'm redoing the office, was like $500. Yeah, not paying that.
That's not as expensive as I thought. I thought you were going to say something like almost 1,000 or something, but that's not terrible. But yeah, it's also not that large. But
no. And at the end of the day, like I can spend $500 on a lot of better things than a neon Bourbon Lens sign.
Yeah, like more bourbon.
Cool, yeah. Lucky for us. That doesn't have to. That's not a normal item expenditure, from time to time, but not mostly. But it's pretty cool to like see all the things you can do with your logo. I just don't know what I would really want to do to make it look cool in my office.
One thing I think we might need to do is take a look at doing some more polos, because I've gotten a few questions like, hey, you going to do some more of those pullovers or the polos? And I don't know, maybe a limited run, something like that.
Hey, if people want to do polos or they want to do pullovers, you all let me know. Jake at bourbonlens.com. We'll do a month pre-order. We'll get it all ordered up. Pay before we go here, people. This is definitely how this works.
I don't want anybody flaking out.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not carrying inventory. We did that once with t-shirts, and that was a utter failure. Also, still have some Bourbon Lens t-shirts if you're interested, only in big boy sizes, like real big boy sizes. So if you're a fan and you wear maybe an X times 2 or 3, give us a shout. Got a t-shirt. With
double
your name
X,
on it.
triple X.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's busy. You just got back in town. You were in DC last week. Is it good to be home?
Absolutely. I was expecting to be there and like it'd be nice. You know, springtime there's generally pretty nice. They've got the cherry blossoms and all that stuff, but it rained the entire time I was there. And the worst part was just getting there. I was like flying through terrible storms, worst turbulence I've ever felt in my life. It was sickening almost how bad it was, but
you did avoid the tornadoes of Louisville, Kentucky. So, catch 22.
Yeah. Leaving the family at home and being in DC, when they call me like, hey, we're under a tornado warning. I'm like, yeah, I know. I got the alerts on my phone.
Yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit about Derby. I was on my way to a dinner with Chris Morris at Capitol Grill. And, I literally get to the corner of Old Hetty and Taylorsville Road, and there's an AT&T building which houses the siren for the tornado, and it just goes, and I was like, "You're it." He turned back home into the basement. And luckily, we're talking special pours. A special pour had just been delivered to the house. And so I cracked that bad boy open and enjoyed that while I watched the frantic news covering and said a few prayers for the people in Prospect in southern Indiana, because it got rough there for a minute.
Pretty scary stuff. Yeah. I mean, I was watching the maps from DC and I was just like, holy shit. Well, north and south of us, really.
Yeah.
Pretty close to, like, Bardstown got hit by a few as well. So, it's never fun when spring breaks out like that in Kentucky. It's always nice when the weather breaks and it becomes nice, but it also brings some pretty shitty tornadoes and stuff.
Yeah, I was talking to a guy at church this morning, and he was literally 3 minutes ahead of the 3 trucks that flipped over. So like he was ahead of those trucks by about 3 to 5 minutes, he said. And he got in and they were like, expect a tornado to hit your all's area in the next two minutes. So like that tornado that knocked those trailers, like he was running away from it, like as it followed him to his house.
I bet those, I mean, not that anybody wants to be involved in like a crash or whatever, but that's probably the best thing that could happen to those trucks is just to tip over, not to get swept up and all that. But that's crazy.
It is. It's wild. So, for all those people who were affected by the tornadoes that may be listening to the Bourbon Lens, definitely in our thoughts and prayers. And we'll continue to think about you all as you all recover through that. And we'll be watchful and mindful as we continue through the spring season. And speaking of spring, the calendar's turned to April, and Derby is early this year. And it is a big Derby. It is Derby 150. Scott, the next time there's a extravagant Derby, would maybe be 175. We could celebrate that. We won't be spring chickens, but we'll be elder statesmen at that point. But
still doing our bourbon thing.
Yeah, maybe.
It might evolve by then, but yeah.
We'll be in the digital world or something. We'll be on your Oculus or something. Talking whiskey to you, and you'll be drinking. We'll talk about this in a minute, but you can like spray bourbon on your hands and rub it into your skin versus having to drink it. So those people who don't like to drink bourbon can infuse it.
Essential oils.
Exactly. Derby 200, we will definitely not be spree chickens. We will be one step away from the Tales of the Crypt. That's where we'll be. We'll be there.
Damn. Yeah, you're right. 50 years from now, we'll be, shit, I'll be almost
You'll almost 90. Be 90 and I'll be 80, 84, 85.
Well, hopefully I'm here for it because that'd be pretty cool.
It would be pretty cool, but we'll celebrate 150 like we're not going to see 175 or 200. So, we're lucky enough. We get to try a lot of rarer whiskeys or special releases from brands. It doesn't even have to be the heritage brands. It also comes from the craft brands as well. And I want to lay some ground rules or groundwork here, right? When you think special, right? I think sometimes people think it's gotta be Pappy Van Winkle or it's gotta be King of Kentucky. So when I say special or a kind of like an enthusiastic pour, something that you would be like, yes, you got to get this. Like, how would you set that up for a friend or in a tasting with people around?
How would I set it up like to suggest something that they might want to grab?
How would you explain like this is a special pour? I really want you to have it. Like what qualifies that? How would you kind of share this story with somebody?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it, right? Is the story, because a lot of it gets lost in like, well, how expensive is it? Is it a special pour because it's super expensive? Because we know that happens all the time. But like, maybe there's like a story that you connect to. Also, a lot of it could be something as simple as like a year that it was produced. It came out on a special year that, you had some big event come up. So some special way that you could like tie it to that, or it could be like somewhere where you're from, it was made in Bardstown and this is a whiskey from Bardstown and that's where I grew up. Or I grew up in Iowa and this is a whiskey from Iowa, something like that. So it's like, I think it's just connecting a story.
Yeah.
It doesn't always have to be expensive. Most likely if you are searching for a special bottle, you're probably going to want to spend a little bit more for it. Cause then you can say like, hey, it's not like my $15 JTS Brown, although that is a pretty damn special bottle, whatever.
To you, it's a special bottle to you, right? I think that the most important part of a special bottle is that story. And it also has to be something that has resonated with me personally while I've been drinking it, while I've been tasting it, like what makes it stand out in the realm of bourbon, right? Because I was looking through the list there. I have a lot of special whiskeys, I feel like. I have a lot of really cool, special whiskeys from around the world. And ultimately, what qualified it for me was a theme. There was something I noticed about the whiskeys and the bourbons I was looking at. It would be something that I would feel really comfortable with giving as a gift at a wedding, at a birthday, at a retirement event. Like, it was something that I could like put a milestone marker on. And so that helped me kind of qualify what I picked for tonight's conversation. And so it also, because we're talking Derby, I wanted to pick something Kentucky. I wanted to wrap it into that as well. And so without further ado, I'll share mine and then a theme. But I picked Peerless Double Oaked Bourbon. I think one, like you said, it does have a little bit of a higher price tag. I think it's like $150, $175 kind of range. It does carry a little bit more price. Typically distillery only. Sometimes you can see it out in the market, but not often. I think I got mine at Total Wine, luckily enough. So the price was cheaper than most there. It's cool because this was our first interview that we ever did was Peerless. So that's got a little bit of place in my heart from a Bourbon Lens perspective. It was one of the first tours that we all did together, which is cool. We got some really good friends that work there. And ultimately, this is a bourbon that you don't actually have to be a huge bourbon lover to like, because it has that sweetness. It's got a lot of flavors that the general public would like, and it's not over bourbon-y. It's got like those caramels, the vanillas, the chocolate, the coffee, like all of that's in there, which I think makes it a really approachable pour for a gift and or a special occasion.
No, it's a great choice. And, plus it's local. It's local to Louisville. And I think that's cool in of itself. It's a damn good looking bottle. So I think that's also a component of it.
That's a good point.
We all know that looks on a shelf, looks on your bar. That's a big part of just like somebody wanting to like, hey, what's that? I've never seen that. Or that's an interesting shape, or that's an interesting bottle, or, that's pretty cool looking. Let me try that. So I think that's part of it. Like when you're gifting something, you want it to look good. So, I mean, I hate to say it, but, sometimes the brands do get it right. A higher price point does work out. Putting an age statement on it does work out. Putting a bit, putting it in a nice package, nice stopper, everything like that, it works out.
Yeah. I think that's good. And I think also like, proof point, right? Sometimes like when we think about bourbons in particular, we think, it's got to be barrel proof. It's got to be like this extraordinarily hot whiskey. Like this comes in at 107.4 proof. Like it's approachable for everyone at that. You could drop water, you could drop a cube, and you won't really hurt the whiskey whatsoever, and it becomes that enjoyable sip for every bourbon whiskey drinker that there is. So I think that played a lot into it. But my other theme with this though is I wanted to go for that double oaked. When I think about that for a special pour, it is approachable. So my runner up to this was Woodford Reserve Double Oaked. One, because Woodford and Brown-Forman are so tied in with the Derby, it made a lot of sense to look in that kind of wheelhouse. The 1910, that Old Fine whiskey, also from Old Forester, kind of played into that kind of realm for me as well. So those were my backup plans to this, because I think those bottles, $55 are still great value. They are great gift bottles. And it's to say, hey, I know you like this and you would appreciate this, but I don't know where you are from like a connoisseur or a bourbon enthusiast. Like if you're only a high proof or like, with these, you get a lot of flavor because of that extra oaking. And so I noticed my theme was double oaked mint special to me. And so we'll unpack that as we go, but that was kind of a theme that I saw with the whiskeys that I wanted to pick out for this conversation.
Yeah, I think Woodford, it's classic. And then like the double oaked, honestly, I think is better than Woodford. I think like if you're going to spend the money, just get the double oaked because it's so much better.
It makes a hell of an old fashioned too.
It makes a hell of I'm just going to pour a little whiskey into a glass and just sit there, cold weather, warm weather, doesn't matter.
Well, and the hard part for me was because I've kind of made a resolve. If I'm upstairs, there's only 2 whiskeys upstairs at all times. It's Evan Williams White Label and it's Woodford Double Oaked. That approaches everybody. If you want to have a drink, you have to come to the bar, and the bar is downstairs, right? So like, if you just want a neat pour or you want to pour upstairs, it's going to be one of those 2 things. So like, it's hard to call it special when I have it as my like everyday quote unquote, but it was $48 at Costco. It's like, I couldn't pass it up for $48.
Mm-hmm.
But it makes for a hell of a pour. I probably have it once a week. It's just that good to me.
Well, and to some people, $50 is splurging on bourbon.
True.
And there's nothing wrong with that too. It's like, I normally buy a $20 bottle of bourbon. Maybe I want to go up to a $40, $50. And I don't want to like, it's not for everybody to just drop $100. I know that. And it's not for me either, but.
No, but my handle of Evan Williams White Label bottle and bond was, $24.
That's true too.
Can't beat it. Like, I think a special means a lot of things to a lot of people, but like the 3 that I mentioned in particular, I think are meant for that toast, to raise a glass, to have that like cheers moment with your friends or slancha or whatever you want to say. All 3 of those kind of fall into that purview in the way I make up a special moment.
No, it's good.
So Scott, I kind of gave you my way I view it and the 3, a couple of whiskeys that I was thinking about for these special events. Now you will throw me for a loop here, because if I were to guess, you would have gone like Henry McKenna 10. And the reason I say Henry McKenna, it's not because of the price. It's because like the stuff you did with your brother growing up for his daughter. So I was thinking maybe there you go. But I also know you're jaded by the price point. So
yeah,
you're not going to like sneak in like a mellow corn just to like piss me off.
Nah.
So I'm really interested on where you go here, because you do have a lot of bourbons that show up. And I will say, over the last 5 years, your palate and your willingness to drink other whiskeys has definitely opened up.
It's a good point about Henry McKenna. It still holds a special place in my heart, but it's like every time I look at the store shelf and it's just higher and higher price, it just doesn't make sense to me. So fortunately, I've got a few bottles stashed away. So maybe that could be a special pour, right? It's like, and one of my points about, my thoughts about special pours is like having a date on a bottle, like being able to identify like something like this was made on XYZ date. It's a special date, or maybe it's a special year, something you can identify with. It's also, it's like drinking bourbon with, friends and family for a special event. It's an event, right? So like something you want to remember. It's like this bottle was special. In that vein, also in going with a Kentucky bourbon, I went with 15 Stars. And 15 Stars has a bunch of different offerings. Some of them are blended bourbons and from multiple states.
My mouth watered when you said 15 Stars. I just thought about that platinum bottle.
Yeah, that's a special pour, but I don't know that it's super available still.
No, I don't think it is. But that's that and the sherry cask, man, are nuts. Like both really, really good whiskey. That brand puts out some bangers.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was thinking. Like they do have a range, right? Some of theirs are super expensive, like the platinum. I think it's like $250, $270.
It's a 15-year-old whiskey. Like, I mean, they're priced appropriately.
Yeah. So, but then they also have some that are 99 to $150. And in this instance, the one I picked is one of their newest releases that just came out, I think a couple weeks ago. It's their 8 and 15 year private stock Kentucky straight bourbon. So it's a blend of 8 and 15-year-old Kentucky bourbons. I am drawn to 15 Stars because I think it's really cool that it's a father and son. Like, they created this brand and they've been killing it. Like you said, they've put out a lot of good whiskeys. They've got big plans, in the future to also release some of their own distilled whiskey. And, for now, this is a sourced whiskey, but it's sourced from Kentucky distilleries. So it's got a cool story. It's got an age statement. So it's like, I think you can identify with that. You're like, 15 years ago, what was going on 15 years ago? Some of this whiskey was distilled 15 years ago. That was kind of what I was thinking. Plus the silly things that we might give grief to sometimes. Packaging is killer on this one. It looks cool. It looks like a vintage bottle on your bar. It's got a nice heavy ass metal stopper that could serve as a paperweight, or a weapon in case of emergency.
Yeah.
So that was my first pick.
Yeah.
And they're always just solid, right? Like, if you're looking for a brand to branch out to, or maybe to splurge a little bit, this might be one of them.
So it's interesting what you said about 15 Stars, because it was around the packaging piece. It's like, until you said what you said about it being vintage, I was kind of like, the packaging's just kind of, yeah. But then when you kind of put it in the lens of 60s, 70s kind of packaging, you're like, aha. It makes a little bit more sense. It feels a little more palatable from that perspective. So I'm glad you did that. I mean, it's a super easy to read label. I think that's the first important thing. It's pretty transparent because they are sourcing whiskey. If you want to know more, go back and check our podcast with Rick and Ricky from late last year, early this year. Really good guys with a whole host of knowledge. And I can't wait for that black corn whiskey to come out that they're doing with Bardstown Bourbon Company. But yeah, I think 15 Stars in general, from a lineup perspective, is special because most of their whiskeys are going to be $90+.
Yeah. Yeah.
Until they can put out their own stuff that they made from 0 to, 4 years old.
Yeah. And when we were throwing this idea out, it's like, I don't like to spend $150 on a bottle of bourbon all the time. I mean, but we're talking special occasions, right?
Yeah.
150 at Kentucky Derby. Might as well spend $150 on a bottle.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not spending $17,000. I'm sorry, Woodford. It's a cool ass bottle, but I can't do it. I love y'all. Just can't do it. So that raises a point. I know you have another one we're going to talk about in a second.
I got two. I got one that I didn't talk about yet, didn't mention yet, but
you hiding shit in the pre-show meeting. So 150, right? A wedding, Derby 150, a wedding, anniversary, kids being born, right? I feel all monumentous, kid graduating from high school, college. What would you allow yourself to spend on a cool bottle? I have my number because I haven't bought it yet. I want to buy a Jameson 21. So on his 21st birthday, he can drink 21-year-old Jameson.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that would be so sick.
Yeah.
I know that bottle's $400, maybe more.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's one of those things. It's his not named after Jameson Irish whiskey, but how cool would that be?
Especially here's the real cool thing is in 20 years or 18 years or how many years it's left, but you buy it that year and it's it was distilled and barreled in the same year that he was born.
Yeah, because I've been trying to find something that was bottled in 2019.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also have the Michter's Pour Your Own that I did for Jameson, when we first started the podcast in 2019. So I have that. His name's on it. It's in It's sitting there. And so like, he's got two whiskey. Like I want to have that and that for him to be like, that's pretty cool. So like $150 to $400 is kind of like my thing. But like, I've also thought like if I get that sell or I get that bonus, like there's not a lot of premium American whiskey. So would I buy a premium Scotch like a Macallan 25 because I've tasted just a little bit, or a Dalmore 25 tasted just a little bit? But then it's like, that's $3,000.
No. I just,
and then I'm like,
I have a hard time wrapping my head around that price point.
Yeah. So I think $400. It's kind of my limit.
Yeah. I mean, you asked me 5 years ago, I probably would have said $100.
Well, whiskey market was different 5 years ago.
Exactly. But you're asking me today, and Bourbon Lens is so, we're making so much money here, hand over fist, that, just rolling in the money. So
drops of money. And facetiously, we paid more in taxes than we made last year.
Yeah. So
really. that'd be terrible.
We got to get a new accountant. I would say comfortably for a special event, special bottling, $250, $300.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing is, it's like, how long do you want to keep it? You know what I mean? Like, how
that's
long
the hard part.
Yeah. So like, it's like, do you want to be able to like, it's a one day, there it is, or do you want to be able to hold on to it? Like I held on to my old Rip Van Winkle that I bought for Jameson, like that I won in a raffle. I held on that for, I don't know, he was probably 3 by the time I finished that bottle. Because I had a strict rule. I only drank it when people who met him for the first time came over. I didn't care how old he was. You met Jameson the first time, that gave you the keys to the car to drink Old Rip Van Winkle.
Yeah. Again, it's all about the story, right? It's like, it's just whatever story you want to attach to it. So like I said, it could be a $70 bottle. It could be a $50 bottle. But if there's a story behind it.
Speaking of 150th, I'll tie in something I got to do recently. I got to celebrate Pappy Van Winkle's 150th birthday.
Hot damn.
Down at Pappy & Co. And you didn't. I'm sorry for you. And I made you jealous. But for that special occasion, the Van Winkle family busted out a Pappy 20. And he's like, we don't always have one of these bottles. And it was me and like 6 other media folks. And they were like, would you like a pour of Pappy 20? And I said, in my most elegant voice, yeah. And so I went up there and had a pour with the Van Winkle family. And, it was really cool. Like, that's a story. I got to celebrate Pappy Van Winkle's 150th birthday by drinking 20-year-old Pappy Van Winkle. That's pretty damn cool.
With the Van Winkle family.
That's a story, right?
Yeah.
Because that's a bottle I'm not going to buy on secondary, because I'm not sure as hell not going to find it here. And I didn't go to the Liquor Barn Lottery. First time I have not gone to the Liquor Barn Lottery since 2017.
Wow. That's surprising. I've never done it. So
it's fun. Like that, the old school, when like we would have a bunch of friends go and get wristbands in the morning, go get breakfast, come back. Like we made a day out of it. Now everybody's got kids, and it's like, I don't want to spend 5 hours in a liquor store parking lot.
Yeah. I'd rather play golf or something.
I'd rather sleep.
Yeah. But again,
important things.
Here's the deal. You win a bottle, even if it's not the most expensive bottle. There's a story there, right? This bottle, I remember when I got this bottle at a raffle, and I had 8 other friends there.
Yep.
It's like, there's a story. It's a special event. It's a special occasion bottle now because you sat in line for 5 hours and you won a bottle and you won the chance to spend $100 on it. So it's like, that's a special event bottle.
Yep. Hey, week of my birthday, 2019, right after Jameson was born, sat in the Liquor Barn parking lot with Michael Burton, Josh Endler, my dad, Edgar Salings. And my dad and I got called back-to-back groups. I got a Thomas H. Handy, which we've gotten to enjoy multiple times over the years. And my dad got a George T. Stagg. The George T. Stagg sits in my basement. When that moment to get that bottle to open up, like, that's going to be awesome. My dad can't drink. And so it's like, I keep that bottle until, that one day when he's not around, and I open it up and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Like, that's special. That's got a story. You know what I mean? So speaking of your next one, I do have an inkling on this next one. It is Derby related.
Derby related. Oh, you're guessing what my next one is, not the one that I told you.
My guess is that you're going to be clever and go something like with a horse on it, like Blanton's. You big Blanton's guy, aren't you?
Yeah, big Tom Blanton's guy. Like all the letters. They all taste different, right? All the letters taste different.
You're telling me that they're not all in warehouse age?
No, they all are in warehouse age, but all the letters, the BLANTSTOS or whatever.
Did you get the apostrophe?
So I commented that on somebody's video on Instagram, and like 4 people responded. They're like, that's not true, right? And like, it's a joke, right?
It's April Fool's, right?
But I was like, yeah, much like 4 Roses and the different letters, they all have different flavor profiles. I can't even say it without cracking up because it sounded so ridiculous. And people were like, that's not true. I'm like, of course it's not true. It's a joke.
That is a joke.
Yeah, but apparently my dry sense of humor doesn't go well on Instagram.
Oh, also, I have a breaking news. I looked across my desk, unintentional, and I've got something to share with you after this one.
Oh, cool. I'm looking forward to it. So next special occasion, and I was really just thinking Derby. I was like, what is a good Derby bottle? Like, what is a good bottle to pick up for Derby? So I went with Pinhook. Pinhook's got a lot of different offerings. Some are Kentucky bourbons, and some are ryes, and some are Indiana. But I do have a bottle on my bar that I think I'm going to open on Derby Day, but it was a gift to me. Pinhook Bourbon Resolve from 2023. Kentucky straight bourbon. It's wax dipped. I mean, that's kind of cool. And it's got a big ass horse head on the front of it.
Readily available. It's got all the horses are Derby named. Burbadini, Tiz Rye. Like you got a bunch of cool of names on there. Go back and listen to that podcast with the team from Pinhook. Like that's a really good one. And they do a really good job being able to blend 2 and 3 year old whiskey and make it taste like leveled up like 4 and 5 year old whiskey.
Yeah. And they do like the vintage style, which we've talked about this. Like, I think that's cool to be able to look at it, over the years, like as it progresses and as they put out older releases and things like that. So, you can go back and say, oh, I picked up this Pinhook. It's got 2020 on it, or whatever, because that's a special year. That was the year I got married, or the year I got a promotion, or the year I had a kid. I thought of that as like, it's not super expensive. I think it's like $50. I think some of their vintage offerings, like the 6, 7, and 8 years, have gone up in price, but
they're like $70. But you can also get the store picks at Liquor Barn pretty regularly. I think store picks are another way to go special. I think our Bourbon Lens picks are something special for you and I that we like to pour for people. But yeah, I think Pinhook is really cool, and it does meet that Derby theme kind of right in line.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I was thinking. But, as we've kind of talked about this too, I've had a couple additional ideas pop into my head.
Oh, I like additional ideas. And that's kind of what scanned. I scanned the portfolio that is my desk. That is dirty most of the time, according to my wife, because there's too many sample bottles out. And I have a good friend. His name is Charles. Charles, shout out to Charles. Derby 150 calls for Old Foe 150th anniversary. Batch number 1, right?
Nice.
How cool is that? I've never had any of the Old Foe 150s. It's sitting here, 62.8. Friend shares it with me. Why not talk about a special pour when you're talking about Derby 150, even though Brown-Forman's a year older?
Yeah, isn't that crazy? It's like the timing of it.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. And that's kind of where I was going too. Like I was looking at these 2 bottles and I was like, wait, these are both sourced whiskeys, which I'm kind of a heritage distillery type of guy, like, so I was thinking, I was like, well, I got to get back to my roots, right? Here's a bonus pick, and it's Kentucky only, but Evan Williams single barrels. So they do the vintage style too, where they, turn it around and it says what year it was distilled and when it was barreled. And
they have the Derby bottles.
What's that?
They have the Derby bottle Evan Williams as well.
Yeah, I think those are long gone though. I missed that opportunity, but that's a cool one.
Yeah. I think just the regular Woodford with the different labels, right? Like it's a label change, but I know a lot of people collect those. Just like I collect the Maker's Mark spring meat bottles, or the Triple Crown winning bottles. Now I will tell you, I've had it multiple times. The 1998 National Championship Kentucky Denim bottle that was released for Keeneland is still to this day one of the best Maker's Marks I've ever drank in my life. Shout out Steve Nally.
Yeah, and we also had that one at Frankfort Avenue Liquors, wasn't it?
We had that on a special event with Mint Julep Tours.
Yeah, so it's like, hey, it comes full circle.
It does. I mean, it's when you start to kind of like unpack what special means, it all comes back to shared experiences.
That's true too. Like I said, it could be a $40 bottle, it could be a $140 bottle, it could be a $400 bottle. If you have a story that it ties back to, I think that's so. Maybe that's where the lesson is here.
Yeah.
Don't worry about what the special bottle is when you're picking it up off the shelf. Just make it a special bottle.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I hope people will share back with us at the end of this is your stories, because that's what ultimately like we want to do is we want to tell stories about these brands, but we want to hear your stories as well. Like we don't want this to be a one-way thing. We want it to be a two-way street. And I'll tell people this, we have a friend, who lives in Texas, and man, I get a text from Clarence, pretty regularly, whether it's a cigar to tell Scott, like he's like, hey, tell Scott I'm smoking this cigar tonight, or him, sharing his experience that he just had in Ireland, whatever. It's like, he's just a fan of the podcast and sent an email. And then he saw my phone number at the bottom of my like email tag, and he just texted me. He's like, you texted back. And I'm like, yeah, man. Like, you want to talk whiskey? You want to share life? Like, I'm all about that. Like, that's what this community's for. That's what Bourbon Lens is about. Like, you could ask our Patreon members. I feel like they know that about us. Like, we're always here, good, bad, ugly, and different. I think that's what I want people to share with us is, A, what is their Derby 150 bottle if they got one that they're thinking about? But two, what are those bottles that have been made special by those shared experiences?
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool because you really could have any bottle and it becomes special because of the person that you opened it with or the person you poured it with or where you were. So, yeah. Go out and spend $400 on your bottle. It's going to taste great as if you spent $40 on it if you're enjoying it with people you enjoy.
Amen. And you know what? I said cheers. I said sláinte. I'll celebrate the Jewish l'chaim on that one. Because man, it's a lot of fun to share these stories. Now I'll ask you really quickly, what's been your favorite pour that we've shared over the years?
I would, I'd have to look way back in the podcast, but I think it was back when we drank Thomas H. Handy, and it was at your house when we did the bracket during March Madness.
Yep. The first and only March Madness bracket.
Just because that was like a very like that podcast episode or that event that we did together, like has like woven its way through the podcast over the years.
I know that. And, it allowed us to expose ourselves to influence of people in the industry like Marcus, like hanging out with us and being a part of that. I think, man, some of my favorite ones, like it's been just like, I don't know, sitting in the basement with Trey Zoller was pretty cool. Drinking Jefferson's, drinking Hopmeyer with Jeff Hopmeyer was pretty damn cool.
Yeah.
Cause he's got a lot of tentacles into things, but some of my favorite pours and some of my favorite memories are with the Bourbon Lens Patreon team, like with the people that make up the tasting club and the guests we've had. I thought like Colby showing us the Rick House via Zoom.
Yeah. Here, take a tour of something you're not going to be able to tour until you come out, to
the ranch. I mean, like that was really cool. I thought Lisa Wickers when she was with Widow Jane with the Bourbon Lens Patreon group was pretty cool. Those are the pours because it like not only involved us, but it involved the community that we've helped create. So I'm going to say those.
That's a good one. I think that one of my favorite parts of like that, and then also just having a podcast in general, and people ask me this a lot, like, you got a podcast? Like, what do you do? How do you do that? Like, what does that mean? It's like when I get to expose people to brands and stories and bottles that they might not have ever considered, or they might not have even known about. Like, I love sending a picture to a friend and be like, check out this bottle I just got. Like, check out this. They're like, what is that? Well, tell me more. Like, so it's like exposing people and doing what we do, right? That's why we do this, is to tell people about the stories and the brands and the bottles that they might not know about.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like this is getting sentimental. Like we're like signing off the Bourbon Lens, but we're not, guys. Bourbon Lens is strong. We, episode 300 is in the future. It's going to happen in 2024. We got a lot to do and a lot to cover. So we're not going anywhere. But it's always great to like take a moment to pause and reflect on what makes life special, and what makes life special is the stories.
That's absolutely right. And I had to look back, but this episode won't be a milestone episode. But we've had some good ones too. 275 is coming up, and then 300 will be here before we know it. So
episode 200 was pretty cool. Even though we only got 10 mils
to split.
The last drop was pretty cool. And shout out Buffalo Trace for the 10 mils.
Big time. I mean, but we also did 250, the BTAC collection.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. BTAC was pretty cool. Shout out Jaleesa. Shout out the team at Sazerac for the opportunity, because man, Eagle Rare 17, woo, that was special. That's special. But yeah, I think I can go on and on about the stories of the whiskeys that we drank, because there's a lot of them, and they make them special. And just think about all the events that we got to show up, and those made those bottles that much special, like more special. It's like I make fun of the naming convention of the Jack Daniel's single barrel proof rye whiskey all the time, but it's because I had a hell of a time at Jack Daniel's drinking that single barrel proof rye whiskey with a bunch of good people.
Yeah,
like, and sharing stories and having conversations, like that's pretty damn cool. Like, it's all about shared experiences, and like I'll never forget those times in those Airstreams drinking rye whiskey with that group of people.
That was pretty freaking cool.
Yeah. 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 So, I mean, end of the day, I think I want to know people's stories. So if you got them, or if you want to come on and you want to tell your story, you let us know, because I'm interested in telling stories. We're not doing Off Hour Season 3 this year because they launched their new whiskey. So we got some whiskey stories to tell this year, and why not the people in the community? Just throw it out there.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
Well, Scott, Derby 150's in in a month. I don't know who's running, but I'll bet money. Don't you worry.
Just a couple of weeks away from this podcast. So yeah, definitely check it out.
Well, as always, Scott, it's good to hang out with you. Good to catch up. And for everyone listening, we'll catch you next time. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Bourbon Lens. Make sure you're connected with Scott and I via social media on Instagram, X, and Facebook. We'd love to connect. And if you're more the professional type, follow us over on LinkedIn. If you want to know more about Bourbon Lens, make sure you're subscribed to our weekly newsletter, The Weekly Pour. For exclusive content and more, check out Patreon. Follow us there at Bourbon Lens. And last but not least, on your favorite podcast listening app, make sure you're subscribed because every Monday, Scott and I release a podcast, and we would love to have you here listening to the newest features and the newest whiskey news. And until next time, cheers.